Welcome back. Now, as we've been reporting in one of the leading stories this morning, Gauteng High Court Division Judge President Dunstan Mlambo will today be the third candidate to be interviewed for the Chief Justice position. Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga and the Constitutional Court, Supreme Court of Appeal President Mandisa, they were first and second of the four judges to be interviewed for this week. And now for their view on this process and how it has unfolded thus far, we're joined by President of the Black Lawyers Association, Advocate Bayethe Maswazi. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Advocate, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much, Sakina, and good morning to you and the viewers as well.
Let's start with your observations of the process thus far.
It's a momentous occasion. I'm sure the students of the constitutional law and jurisprudence are glued to their seats to see South Africans affirming their constitutional democracy through the appointment of the Chief Justice. So far, the candidates that have appeared before the JSC have been marvelous. It's a rigorous process, and it has to be in order to give us the best Chief Justice that we deserve.
So let's speak to them, the four shortlisted candidates. And the first two that we have seen, a brief assessment and not necessarily, asking you to give us marking out of a certain percentage or anything, but just your assessment of the first two interviews that we saw.
Both of them have impeccable credentials. They have leadership qualities. They are intellectuals in their own right. As you know, the Chief Justice has to speak for the judiciary through his judgments, and those judgments must be credible enough for other judges to follow them. And certainly the two candidates that have since been interviewed match that criterion quite impeccably well.
So you've been a campaigner for the transformation of the judiciary as a sector overall. How do you think that this can best be illustrated from these shortlisted candidates?
The most important aspect for us is the fact that for the first time it was a very public process. In other words, there was a profound process of public participation from the nominations invited by the president to the time when the selection committee sat and comments invited. So it has been really a public participation process. And we believe that is necessary to give us, as I have said, the best Chief Justice that South Africans deserve. So to us, it's a transformative process, and the Constitution demands no less in 1742 of the Constitution that the appointment of a judge, including the Chief Justice, must reflect the demographics and the gender profile of the populace of South Africa.
Given the South African demographic, does that mean that it should reflect that we have a female Chief Justice?
It should. There is no problem why it should not. But most importantly, we should not make the mistake of reducing judges to their gender only, because it actually diminishes their potential as well, their prestige. Women lawyers have acquired skills, and they have participated in various levels of the judiciary, ought to be appointed not merely on the basis that they are women, but because they have made acquired experience sufficient for them to be eligible candidates.
And I think that's a very important point, because very often, we get bogged down with issues, but ultimately it is the best candidate for the job. And if a female is the best candidate for the job, then that shouldn't be an issue.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. And competence and the provisions of Section 1742 of the Constitution can actually go together. It is I do not subscribe to the notion that if you can have competence without necessarily having a transformative candidate. They can easily go together, as we can see. President Maya has got impeccable credentials as a lawyer, an advocate, as a judge in various divisions of the High Court as well as at the SCA. So it shouldn't just be about gender. It has to be also about the competence and the experience of the candidate, as I've said.
And both candidates were quizzed about their views on transformation of the sector. What did you make of their responses to these questions?
Well, beginning with Judge Madlanga, I think the question relating to whether South Africa is ready for a woman Chief Justice and his attempt to sort of duck the question did not do him any favor. And in my view, he could have answered that question quite pointedly, either yes or no. We expect him to say yes because his experience and his credentials in the empowerment of women speaks for itself. In relation to President Maya, she was asked yesterday about our comments as the BLA in relation to the appointment of white males at the SCA in acting capacity. And we gave statistics of her record in the appointment of white males at the SCA. And her response that we do not understand what she is trying to achieve, to me, was astoundingly surprising, because I would have expected her to actually provide the necessary particularities as to what is it that we do not understand. And most importantly, the fact that she did not dispute the statistics that we put forward is also, to me, took away from her than it gave.
So going forward, any sort of expectations on your side, and what are you hoping would be asked of the candidates that are still to come?
I expect consistency in the same the same vigor that has been demonstrated with the two candidates. I expect that commissioners are going to dig deep into the jurisprudential philosophy of the candidates, as they have done with the previous candidates. And so we are in for interesting times.
Well, we'll park it there for the time being, and hopefully, of course, have another opportunity to talk to this particular process when it concludes. But thank you so much for your time this morning, Black Lawyers Association advocate Bayethe Maswazi. And of course, staying with this particular story, and Hasina Gori has been following these developments for us all week. So let's take you there to Sandton, where Hasina, of course, is Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, the next candidate to be interviewed for the position of Chief Justice. Hasina, good morning.
Good morning, Desiree. Yes, it's day 3 of the interviews here in Sandton in the north of Johannesburg. The commissioners are beginning to trickle in slowly as they get ready for that 9 a.m. start. As you mentioned, the Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo being the person that will be in that hot seat today. A long day expected from those that we're speaking to. Many of the issues that are expected to come out will relate to his time and his tenure at one of the busiest judicial districts in the country. He presides over the Gauteng High Court, which is both Johannesburg as well as Pretoria. His judgments around many of the backlash of the state capture will also come under scrutiny, as well as many of the other cases that he has presided over. There's also the issue of modernization and digitization. As we know, this come up in the last 2 days, questions around that. And we know that the Gauteng divisions of the courts are one of those courts that have been piloting these projects, trying out and seeing how the courts can move to more digital spaces. So that will come into account as well. And also his experience and leadership. He's been for 10 years at the helm of the Gauteng division, but also being at the Labour Court. Also his experience at the legal aid will also be brought in when we talk on transformation as well as access to the judiciary. So these are some of the issues we expect to come out today. But to recap the last 2 days, we've seen the other two candidates, that's of the two of the four that will be interviewed over the next few days. Coming on, we've seen Justice Madlanga being asked, quite importantly, on his leadership experience as well as his time in the court as a judge. Also, if elected, the tenure that he would be able to serve as well coming into account there. He's been asked a lot of questions around those issues. Yesterday, we had Justice Mandisa, the only female candidate, and if elected would be the first female Chief Justice of the country, really answering around gender, but she reiterated many times that her gender should not be the reason if she's elected, but her merit and her work as a Supreme Court of Appeals president, her work of mentorship as well as leadership within that court should be what should be taken into account. Today, another long day expected, and as always, you can follow the proceedings on all the SABC platforms as well as digital live streams. So we're going to be taking you to that in the next few minutes. Back to you in studio, Desiree.
Well, thank you, Hasina. Still with Morning Live, still with Sakina, but I'm sure Desiree will pick it up in the next few minutes. Hasina Gori, there, our reporter in Sandton, following these proceedings for us and the interviews for the next Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa.